the world's greatest economies are all very seriously considering adopting tokenized fiat. And in fact, I would make it even more forceful. I would say in 10 years or less, all the world's major economies will tokenize their fiat. And the reason is because tokenization is one of those innovations, and there's not many, one of those innovations where it has no drawbacks. There's very few things on earth where it's only benefits. I cannot come up with a single substantial negative to the tokenization of fiat. It is only positives.
What I thought was I would write an article piece. I've been doing these research interviews and I really enjoy doing them. I speak with experts about their field, and then I write a little bit of a research article on what we spoke about.
I see.
Cool. So
That sounds good.
thank you. So let me start off. So I thought I would start off with a very general question just to really understand Tether's origins. So it started in 2014. And my question is, what was the main catalyst for this?
So the main catalyst for Tether, the main catalysts, and I will give this very briefly, we can dig into it, but there were a number of issues with trading crypto at the time. One of those issues had to deal with getting in and out of fiat. It was a laborious process. There were only a small number, like 2 exchanges globally, that would allow you to deposit fiat, buy Bitcoin, and then cash it out for fiat and get your cash wired back to you. The problem was most of those exchanges only traded Bitcoin or maybe one other token, like what Litecoin or something, right? So super limited. You would have to go to what we used to call the alt exchanges. That was an exchange that carried all the other altcoins. And those were sort of Wild West, but those did not accept fiat. So if you have fiat and you want to be trading altcoins, then you need to go to one exchange to get the Bitcoin, and then with the Bitcoin, transfer that to the alt exchange and then start trading Bitcoin for altcoins. And at some point, typically every couple of weeks, you would get a little concerned. You'd say, oh shit, everything's going to collapse. And you'd want to go to a safe harbor. Well, that might be Bitcoin, but that really wasn't much of a safe harbor either. Ultimately, the real safe harbor was cash, was USD. So then you had to sell all your alts for Bitcoin, transfer the Bitcoin to the exchange that allows fiat conversion, sell your Bitcoin for fiat, and have that wired to your bank account because they didn't hold the cash. And that whole process would take 7 days. By the time you got your cash in your bank, you were a bit ready to go back in. It was very laborious, this process. And so we were like, wouldn't it be nice if we could exchange or do something with our crypto that allowed us to ignore or get away from that volatility, but not have to go through that whole rigmarole. And so that was sort of the genesis of the thinking. And there were many, many ideas we had. Ultimately, we thought, what if we created a synthetic dollar? Okay, that sounded good. And then the real challenging part of it, which was, all right, how would that dollar be collateralized? And what would people think about that collateral? We thought about all the stuff that you've seen since, what Make or Die did with collateralizing via a token. Obviously, what Luna did, which was a disaster, and we very quickly thought that was a bad idea. And a lot of the ideas were actually covered in economic academic research over many, many years. You know, different economists had thought about what would be a good way for a Federal Reserve or a central bank to issue money. And you obviously years ago had money backed by real coins, real metal like gold. Before that, it was actually issued in the form of metal. That money was precious metal or something. And so lots of people had thought about different ways of collateralizing a fiat or collateralizing a thing. We did too, and for various reasons, I think we were absolutely right. We decided that the way we did it at Tether was the right way, and I can go into why we thought that, but I'll leave it there.
Actually, it's a good bridge onto what I was planning on asking next, because I remember those days of Poloniex where you'd go on and you'd see a bunch of loads of numbers, and you're like, oh my God, these
Yeah,
are too many altcoins. What is an altcoin? And there's no euro over here. I remember those days. Um,
right.
when I had seen USDT, I was always like, but I don't, how does it keep its peg? What's really as such
Uh,
the point of it and all this kind of stuff. This was early on before I knew much about it. So my question now is sort of, as we've seen Luna, for example, and what happened with that USD Terra, there is a huge difference now between obviously Tether and that. Um, how does Tether plan to keep its peg as we move into this inflationary environment?
okay. So you're wrong, by the way, and this is something that's taken years for me to explain. Tether has no peg.
Tether
It
has
has
no peg.
never been and never will be pegged to the US dollar, right? Period. End of story. We do not maintain a peg. All right.
Interesting. Interesting.
Tether, I know it's every time I talk about it, people say, how do you maintain a peg? There is no fucking peg. That's the whole point of Tether. There is no peg.
But it remains
Tether,
1 to 1.
no, Tether's redeemable for $1. That's it. No one is pegging it. Pegging is a disaster because that requires a massive balance sheet. And even the biggest countries in the world can't do it, right? They just exhaust their reserves. So we avoided that altogether. There is no peg, and there never will be. If you own a Tether, you can redeem it for $1. Pay for it, trade it at whatever price you want. It's not our problem. That is what makes Tether stable. Because it turns out if you can redeem it for $1, there are times when Tether trades slightly above and slightly below $1. I'll explain why that's the case and why it must be the case. It will never trade perfectly for $1. Just like the euro will never trade exactly for a certain quantity of yen or of pound sterling or of dollars. And the reason is because around the world, there are different people with different desires in terms of what they want to hold. And because Tether is traded on hundreds of exchanges by millions of people 24/7, and as you know, each exchange, especially today with KYC and whatnot, is basically a local monopoly. If you are in Korea, you have a couple of exchanges. You can't really trade on exchanges outside of Korea because Korea's currency control regime makes it very hard to wire money out of the country and vice versa. And so each place, if you're on Coinbase, if you're an American, you can register on Coinbase. It's very hard for an American to register on any exchange outside of the United States. So what you have here are all of these regional exchanges, right? And therefore, each exchange is a local market, and it's only slightly affected by what happens after or outside of it. So if you are, let's say, you're in Coinbase, and you're buying USDT, and let's say a lot of people on Coinbase that day want to sell their USDT because they think Ethereum's going to skyrocket. Well, there's going to be a lot of selling pressure. People want to dump their USDT and they want to buy Ethereum. So people are going to be willing to accept maybe less than $1, 99.98 cents for their tether because they think they're going to make more with Ethereum, right? Now, the opposite happens when everybody gets cold feet, when the fear and greed index starts to go down rapidly and people are worried that something bad is about to happen. People want to dump their crypto and get into Tether. In that case, you always see it. Whenever it's a day of red on Coinbase, I'm sorry, CoinMarketCap, whenever it's just all red and everybody's selling, look what Tether is. Tether's usually selling for more than $1 because people are trying to rush into the dollar. And that is why Tether will never be exactly traded at $1 because there's never going to be a perfect situation where I will only pay $1 and you will only accept $1. Generally, one of us is more wanting to get out of what we're in than the other. And the beautiful thing about Tether is if fools want to trade dollars for 90 cents, there'll be guys like me who'll say, fine, I'll buy dollars for 90 cents for as long as you will sell them to me. And the reason things like Luna happened is because of profound ignorance among crypto people about how stablecoins work, right? That's the reason. When you might remember when Luna was collapsing, I remember Tether dropped to I think it was about 92 cents or something, right? And I remember thinking, that's great, let's buy as much as we can, because they don't understand the difference in collateral. And at this point, it's getting more people are starting to get that as you get more sophisticated people, but it's there's still education because even you thought Tether was pegged to $1.
Yes, I was certain it was more or less pegged to $1.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
Who did you think was maintaining that peg?
So this is what I thought Tether was. So basically, okay, there's this, let's say, company that they've come out with this token. It's called a USDT token. So you can get in and out, so that you don't have the issues like we spoke about with Poloniex. Now how do I why should I trust this company? Because they have treasuries, they have gold, they say they back up all their USD tokens with an actual dollar in one way or another. And they operate because of this price difference that there is, this minor difference between the one USD and this when it goes down to, let's say, 98 cents. And they've managed to make it an extremely profitable way
But answer me
of
this question.
operating.
When it goes to 98 cents, who did you think was flooding the market with buy orders to prop up the price of Tether to $1? Who did
US
you think was doing that?
Tether.
Oh, you thought Tether was? Wow. Okay.
As in, I don't know. I wouldn't say I ever had an opinion as to who was buying it up. You know what I mean? It's
But
more
if there's a peg, then there's someone who maintains that, right? That's the definition of a peg. There's an entity that maintains the price stability.
okay.
So
So
interesting.
so I'm from Malta, okay, and we used
Oh,
to
from
have,
Malta.
yeah, and we used to have the Maltese lira, and this was all
Yeah.
the way through, okay. And in 2004 we entered the EU, and 2008 we moved out of the lira and started getting into the euro. I think it was around
Yeah.
about there.
Yeah.
But when we entered into a dual situation where we had both the Maltese lira and the euro, €1 was equal to 42 cents lira, and it remained like that. So in my head, a pegging does exist. How it's maintained, unsure. These things,
All fiat,
unsure.
all fiat has uh, central banks that issue fiat have an incentive to maintain a trading range with their currency and other currencies. Now, they have to do that because it's backed by nothing, right?
Yeah.
Fiat is backed by nothing. And every attempt by a government to support their currency in the face of, let's say, declining economic activity or war or whatever, it's always fails, right? Japan recently spent about 60 billion USD to try to get its yen from like 160 to the dollar to 150 to the dollar. But you can empty your reserves as a central bank very fast, right? And so to me, knowing how crypto people worked, I thought from the beginning, we will never have a peg because it'll get attacked, nonstop. And as the fools at Luna ultimately learned. So I, uh, I, I do, you're not the first one. In fact, there has never been a person of any level of sophistication I have ever talked to who didn't say it's pegged to a dollar.
I'm glad I said
And,
so
I
it is
always say,
corrected.
no, 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 there's no guarantee. And that's a beautiful thing. If somebody will sell you dollars for 90 cents, buy them.
Makes sense. I mean, in my head, it also means, okay, what does that mean that Tether can go up, USDT can go up to 150, 120?
100%.
And that's not
100%.
a flaw in its
No,
mechanics.
no.
No.
It's like any other asset. In times of, let's say, fear, there's a flight to safety. When in the crypto sphere, that's USDT,
Yeah.
right? When things are rocky, as I said, start watching. You'll see Tether trading across. Don't just look at coin market cap because that's a composite of all the prices. Go to individual exchanges and you'll see that. And then if you go to uh, different altcoins, someone in a really weak altcoin may be willing to trade their altcoin at a very shitty price for Tether vis-a-vis what they would have done an hour before if they get nervous. So it naturally floats because different people have different desires. And again, if you recognize that all exchanges are sort of they're discrete little entities because the people in Korea can't easily get on Coinbase or they can't easily get on Binance, right? Uh, Places where exchanges are regulated, which is pretty much every place, it's very difficult for those people in those places to get on an exchange unless they use like a VPN and all that BS. So you'll always have local markets. There used to be a thing, I guess there still is, called depository receipts. And this is when, let's say, a stock traded in London is also traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And it's kind of like a Tether thing where it's a synthetic of the stock in London, right? And a lot of bankers would trade the price differences, right? You could buy a certain quantity of Mercedes-Benz stock for 2% less than what it was trading in London, right? And this is, by the way, one reason why companies don't like their stock trading on multiple exchanges, because what's the real price? Now, ideally, what should happen is arbitrageurs should come in
Arbitrage.
and they should equate it. And you see examples of this in crypto, right? Where there's a price of a token on a DEX and it's different than the price on the centralized exchange. And so people start to, buy cheaply and sell at a profit. So we do see that. In fact, the primary reason people trade crypto is that arbitrage. That makes up the majority of the trading volume is arbitrage trading.
Interesting. So so Tether basically has unlocked a lot of freedom into the crypto market.
Without Tether, trading volume on crypto globally would drop 75%.
Wow. So
There is no greater, in rank order of catastrophes, the second worst thing in the world for crypto would be if Binance were shut down. And that would be like, a 9.0 earthquake in Tokyo. A meteor strike against Earth would be Tether shutting down. It would plummet crypto back to 2011, 2012 kind of scenario.
20, so €1,000 basically is what you're saying.
Yeah,
€2,000.
yeah, if yeah. By the way, I think that's what would happen. If you look, obviously Tether trades at often 2x the trading volume daily of Bitcoin. But if you look at the trading pairs, 60% of all trading pairs globally settle against Tether. Virtually all trading volume is a token against Tether. Look at any exchange and look at any token and look at the top trading pair. I don't have to look. It's that token against Tether, always. And the reason is because the arbitrageurs and the market makers are trading that token against Tether. Because the only way as an arbitrager to capture a trading profit in an arbitrage trade is if one side of the trading pair is stable. Because otherwise, you don't know if you made any money. If you're trading Solana for Cardano and you're like, I'm up. Well, yeah, but let's say you got a bunch of Cardano, but now you look and Cardano versus dollars is way down, then you actually lost money, in total.
Yeah.
So this is why there has to be a benchmark currency upon which you calculate all of your gains. There has to be. Now, before Tether, it was Bitcoin, right? So people would look and they'd say, do I have more sats? Okay, then I'm making money on this trade. And then after Tether, it all became USD.
So my question to you is, it scares me a bit what you say that if something happens to Tether, there's going to be such a panic, and rightly so, because it's so induced into the crypto market at the moment.
Yeah.
But isn't I always looked at Tether and I said, okay, the Fed don't like Tether for sure. Is this true? Is this a true? Is this something that I'm thinking flawed, wrong? What's your opinion on that?
That the US Federal Reserve does not like Tether?
Why would they?
Here's what I think. I think if you ask them, and you got an immediate emotional response, right? Like, do you like Trump? Do you like Biden? Right? Immediate emotional response, you'll get an answer, right? And I suspect they wouldn't say we love Tether, right? Would they say they hate Tether? I don't think so. I don't think they would say they hate it. What they would do is they would probably say, we're very curious about this thing. Why do people like tokenized fiat? What is it about tokenized fiat that they find appealing? I think that's the more deeper, more like thoughtful response you would get. And of course, the Treasury Department has come out with white papers about tokenized fiat. And by the way, I'm very proud of the fact that the world's greatest economies are all very seriously considering adopting tokenized fiat. And in fact, I would make it even more forceful. I would say in 10 years or less, all the world's major economies will tokenize their fiat. And the reason is because tokenization is one of those innovations, and there's not many, one of those innovations where it has no drawbacks. There's very few things on earth where it's only benefits. I cannot come up with a single substantial negative to the tokenization of fiat. It is only positives. Now, the US central bank, the US Federal Reserve, was moving pretty quickly on experimenting and even rolling out a pilot program of tokenized US dollar. And then it slowed it down. And if you read the comments from Jay Powell, this goes back about a year, I want to say, maybe a year and a half. He, Fed speak is always, a bit inscrutable, right? They're not clear talkers because they don't want to show their cards. But he said, I forget the exact phrasing, I have to remember it, but it was something that said to me, wow, this is going to be a long time now, many more years. But he said something like, we're looking into it, and one day this looks like something we could do. And he cited American education as the reason. And the reason he said that was there were a bunch of conspiracy people, and they still exist on the internet, who started saying what they call a CBDC, central bank digital currency, was like an attempt by governments to control their citizens. And they were all referring to what China was doing with its social scoring policies. And they're like, look, once they have tokenized your currency, they can freeze it. Now, here's why that surprised me. Because, and I realize most people don't understand the way payment systems work, but it's like, hey, guess what? The government can freeze your freaking assets anyway. They don't need a central bank digital currency to
Do that.
cancel you from all access to your fucking digital currency.
It's true.
Like, trust me, as a guy who's had many, many, many bank accounts shut down for no stipulated reason, but I know why. It's because the banks looked me up and said, oh, this guy's in crypto.
Okay, but then I have one question for you. Fair enough, they can freeze your accounts, etc.
Yes.
But let's say I am eating too many chocolates, and they know I'm eating too many chocolates, and they come and they say, listen, you've had your chocolate quota, that's it, no more. So when you go to the supermarket and you want to buy whatever, a dairy milk, it will know that you're buying a chocolate, and it will say, sorry, not allowed. So like if you go, for example, and you want to go abroad and you want to get on a plane, sorry, you've used your carbon miles. I think this is also the extended worry
But why
to
is
a
that not
CBDC.
possible today? Why is that not possible today? You have a credit card, right? All credit cards are attached to banks. All banks are regulated. All banks have digital records because they need to substantiate that those purchases that were debited against your bank account are genuine. So it would take a very quick policy change to say, we want you to send us, and us would be, I don't know, the Treasury Department, by social security number, some identification, the spending category each month of our people. Honestly, man, like that's easy. The companies already do that. And they use that information to market to you, right? If
Do
you
they do
start
that
buying
in Europe and Malta and all these places? Do they do that over here? Like, or does it?
so yes, so it's not a law, right? But what is a law is that if the government makes a request to a financial institution regarding the spending history of anybody, they get that immediately. And even though they're not supposed to, they provide that often without even informing the citizen that they submitted that data. And that's at a high level here. Now, we also know with the US government, Edward Snowden like reported it to us that they have the NSA tracks every phone call, every message, every email, every text message. Who knows if they're also tied into the Ring video service that people have to monitor their homes. I assume they do the same there. So the government unofficially collects all that data anyway. Officially, it's very easy for it to get. If your only resistance to a central bank digital currency was, well, once we do that, they can stop me from making certain purchases, I would say to you, that's not a good reason to dislike central bank digital currencies because they can do that anyway. And so I don't see that as a substantial differentiator. And it certainly wouldn't be the reason why governments would adopt a central bank digital currency. The reason they would do it is because of all these unbelievable benefits to the tokenization of fiat, right? There are incredible benefits that will benefit you as an individual.
Like,
The fact that you can instantly, without any effort and at virtually no cost, transfer money from one person to another with certainty that the other person is going to get it and that it can't be recalled in like a chargeback situation. That's a powerful thing. And how it gets rolled out, of course, is at the end of the day where it all matters, right? Like I remember just a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, there were people in the crypto industry who literally thought that the US government was going to like launch a central bank digital currency on like Ethereum. It was like fucking madness. I'm like, guys, they're going to have their own blockchain, right? So it's really just a database, right? But it's a blockchain, so you can't modify it. And I could see this, by the way. I could see a bunch of member institutions who are part of the central bank digital currency experiment all being blockchain validators. I could see that. And those validators would be the ones who are allowed to approve transactions. That could happen, but it's not going to be, Solana. That's not happening, right? It's
no.
going to be a private blockchain and it's going to be controlled by either the central bank or the central bank and its member banks. And why I personally have one concern, which is that my belief is that these banks will initially all use a blockchain for this tokenized fiat, but none of the savings and none of the speed at which they can make transactions will translate to the consumer. I think they won't want to give up their fees. So they're still going to charge us even though the costs don't exist anymore. That's unfortunate, but I think that's the reality. And it's why a privately issued stablecoin will be more attractive to people.
Like Tether, like USDT.
Yeah.
So the the traits of USDT, are they similar to that of a CBDC?
Well, some yes, some no.
Some yes, some no. So why don't they just embrace Tether?
You mean a central bank?
Yes. Like I asked the Fed, would they don't like the Tether, and you gave a very good answer because it's true. The emotional reaction is to have a spur of the moment thing, but once you look into it deeper, it works.
Yes.
So why can't they meet us halfway? And they go, listen, USDT works. let's back it, and let's back maybe 2 or 3 other ones, that maybe that would show that sort of we do just want the benefits behind stablecoins, aka CBDCs. Am I understanding correctly?
So here's why I would tell you. Let's say Tether was impossibly complicated, right? It was really, really difficult to build. The underlying technology was, hard to understand. There weren't a lot of people with knowledge, and it was extraordinarily expensive in the setup costs, right? To do it. That sounds a lot like, let's say, the Amazon Web Service cloud infrastructure, right? Hundreds of billions of dollars of investment across the world with highly technical staff, monitoring systems that have been developed over many, many years. If a government of any, minor size, or even the US government wanted to do this, it would be an enormous undertaking. It would probably require a line item in the federal budget, and it might take 5 years to actually roll out. This is why, for instance, the US government, which is the biggest in the world, and all other governments in the world don't own aircraft manufacturing facilities. They don't own shipbuilding facilities or tank facilities. What they've decided is that is highly specialized knowledge, and it takes many, many years or decades of know-how to do well. We would be better off just writing a check to the people who know what they're doing and having them build it to our specification.
Agreed.
So that's what you do when something is tremendously difficult and highly specialized. Tether took $500,000 in 2014 to build.
Mad. I didn't know that.
When you see the amount of money these companies like Luna or Basecoin, which was a predecessor of Luna, raised 130 million. And I asked them, guys, do you know what it took us to do USDT? And we were the first, 500,000. Oh, I'm like, maybe you could say 700,000 if I added up a few extra things, but it's under $1 million for the first one. Why do you need 130 million to build the second, third, or fourth one? They didn't, right? You can build Tether very cheaply. So that's one reason why the government would say, well, it's not highly specialized. It's very, very cheap to do. And then the last piece is control. If you and I know nothing else, if you say to me, nothing more than, would you prefer a thing you control, or would you prefer a thing you don't control?
That's the question. That's the question.
Why not say, well, okay, but now if I say, well, you can control it, but here's all of the costs, you're going to say, well, those are trade-offs I don't like. And if I say you can control it and there are no costs, now there are no direct costs, but one. Here's the one cost, right? And this is why governments do like to have private companies do things. Innovation stops whenever government gets involved. It just dies. The best example of this I can give you is the financial system. Financial systems globally are all regulated by their governments. Going back to the times of the Bible, money changers are managed by the government, right? Anytime you touch a government's currency, it wants to be seeing what's going on. And that management becomes regulation and law, and little by little, doing anything different takes literally an act of the government. And as a result, you see very little innovation in the financial world. Now, if you look at DeFi, Jesus Christ, in 2020, we started with decentralized finance about where the Dutch were in the 18th century in terms of stock trading and whatnot. By the end of 2020, we had surpassed, in terms of business models, what was currently being done in the world's regulated financial markets. In 12 months, the speed at which we innovated, I've never experienced that in any other innovation period. And I started the first consumer internet venture capital fund in the mid 90s. There was a lot of innovation very fast in the internet. Nothing happened as fast as DeFi. And when I thought about why, it was because DeFi had one thing different than internet. DeFi was built on the foundation of blockchain, and blockchain was an open source phenomenon. And so people could take smart contracts, copy, paste, modify, whatever. And so I saw as an experiment, real world experiment, that I wish more economists looked at. When you allow permissionless innovation without regulatory intervention, you get a phenomenal pace of innovation. Now, obviously, there would be people who'd say, but what about the risks? Where is their risk? The reason why governments have to be so involved in banking is because they guarantee the depositors their money back. That's the reason. And it's the reason we had the global financial crisis, because bankers took taxpayer-backed deposits and went and recklessly invested those in terrible projects. And when the outcomes were bad, they said to the government, we can't pay back our depositors. And the government said, well, we are on the hook for guaranteeing depositor money. And it's, by the way, it's been one of the things that I've seen that has been always with the media. It's always confusing. I remember when in 2022, when in FTX and Celsius and all the fraud was going on, Genesis and bankruptcies, they're like, it's going to be like the great financial crisis. And I said, no, it's not, because not a single dollar of US or other government taxpayer money was used to buy those tokens. And that's the reason the market collapsed and we didn't have millions of people homeless. We didn't have millions of jobs ended, because everybody just lost their house money, right? Yeah. That is the difference. By the way, I'll finish here. This is one reason I'm not a big fan of ETFs. I think ETFs are a way for taxpayer guaranteed money to start being used to purchase and hold crypto, and I don't like it.
So much you said was really nice to listen to. So I want to pick on the recession part that you mentioned in 2008. Yes, okay, they have to pay out their depositor schemes, but in the process of doing that, didn't they make the whole situation worse 15 years down the line?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And you know what
that
the
was
problem
born,
is?
and that gave rise to huge competition in the form of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I hate when somebody does something, right? And then their justification for it is, if I hadn't done it, the world would have ended. This is what we kept hearing from government people, and it pissed me off. If we don't rescue Citibank, which needed 180 billion US dollars, if we don't give 25 billion to Goldman Sachs and 25 billion to Morgan Stanley, those things will fail. Or if we don't give $200 billion to AIG Insurance, that had issued credit default swap insurance policies to those banks, who should have fucking known that you can't endlessly write insurance as a carrier unless you have an infinite amount of money supporting you. So all of those things were done on the argument that, oh my gosh, if we don't do this, the world's going to end. And it pissed me off because obviously there's this concept of moral hazard, right? And beyond that concept, you have just the people never fully adjusting themselves to how they should be thinking about the financial systems. And if you, in crypto, bad ideas fail all the time. And you look at it and say, people do get wiped out. And in the case of things like Genesis and Celsius, lots of people, hundreds of thousands of people, were lending their crypto to awful institutions that then recklessly invested it and lost it, right? And those people, I suspect, will never lend another Bitcoin again. And that's a good behavior to reinforce. And so I think the only reason why government intervened is because so many people in the global financial system have moved into government, and they are closely tracked by government, and governments get a lot of money from the financial institutions. And so they said, hey, we'll bail you out. And as you said, it's the genesis for the creation of the Bitcoin blockchain. But I don't see how it can ever be avoided. Politically powerful people will always get a bailout. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just how it works.
It's a bit sad though, but it's
Yeah, it's
you know,
annoying.
I'm not gonna argue with reality. You know what I mean? That's the
I
situation. That's
agree.
where we're at, and I'm actually optimistic about the future, because I like Bitcoin a lot. It for me is it's an opt out of whatever we had before. I can still use before, but I also have this opt out, which I like. Um, is there ever going to be a situation where Tether will have some hardware where if I'm a shop, I buy this hardware and I don't need, I can accept payments from CBDCs, from anything. I can accept Japanese yen if I want from this hardware, and you can operate like seamlessly with whatever you have to do? Like, is it heading there? Because you just mentioned DeFi has blown up and it's all this, but in reality, like I walk on the street, no one's talking about it, no one's using it. Like it's still up and coming. You know what I mean?
I do.
So what
Um,
is to come? Like that you're seeing that obviously hasn't yet been introduced.
I just as a caveat, I don't think you need a dedicated piece of hardware, though
No.
it might be nice. You know, we all like our ledgers, so
Yeah.
okay. But if we say, will people be able to um, use some device, could be their phone, to uh, to pay things with stablecoins? Um, I would say yes, and it does happen today. Having said that, consumers pray to the god of convenience. Everything is about convenience, right? And if you are an American or a European, and you have or even your Chinese, and you have Alipay or WePay, or you have Zelle or Venmo or PayPal, uh, and you want to buy something, it is, and now Apple Pay, it's extraordinarily easy to do things when they're tightly integrated into the e-commerce network, right? And when things are not integrated, there is massive friction, which is why, not the only reason why, but one reason why people don't pay with crypto. There's many good reasons not to buy things with crypto. But one reason is it's very difficult to acquire it, to hold it, and to spend it, right? Stable coins are extraordinarily useful, however, if you're one of the 4 billion people not able to access the digital payment networks. You're not able to put money in a bank because where you live, banks aren't trustworthy, or they just won't They don't have a lot of technology to allow you to do things. And in those places, something like a stable coin is incredibly useful. However, because of its tokenized nature, and tokenization does come with a bit of a headache, which is you have to uh, go through a certain process to send it and receive it. That is its safety mechanism, but it also makes it creates friction. So a third party, and this is the way stablecoins will get rolled out, the fact that it's a stablecoin will be invisible to you.
Yeah.
And you will instead be using your payment systems that you already use. Those payment systems will be using tokenized cash. Peer-to-peer payments is surprisingly quite low. Most of us send money to a centralized entity. Almost, we rarely do we buy something from someone online who we meet in like on Reddit or some online forum and then send them a payment. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Mostly we go to centralized locations like Amazon or Alibaba, and we find something we like and we pay with whatever payment system they've integrated. And so that's why I don't think a lot of crypto people thought, oh, crypto's going to allow peer-to-peer payments. And it does allow peer-to-peer payments, but it's just not very relevant to most people.
I think Bitcoin has to go up a lot more for it to become more peer-to-peer.
I don't think so.
Not
I
even.
don't think Bitcoin will ever be a peer-to-peer payment system of any size. I think it's an absolute, no, this shouldn't even be controversial. It's a total failure as a peer-to-peer payment system. No one uses it for peer-to-peer. Who the fuck uses it for peer-to-peer?
Right
Nobody.
now, no one. But let's say it goes in the next 10 years, 20 years.
Okay.
To millions.
Millions of dollars. It still won't be used because it's not convenient.
So let's say, for example, I hire someone on Fiverr to do a job for me.
Yeah.
You want to bypass any fees or all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you go down that route of a peer-to-peer? Not even.
No, you would use a Tether.
Tether, exactly.
Bitcoin is a failure from a payment standpoint. And that's not controversial. It's been around for 15 years. No one fucking uses it for payments.
Yeah, it's true.
I just looked, by the way, 80%, the geology of Bitcoin where you can track last time it's been moved. 80% of Bitcoin hasn't been moved in a year.
Because it's a pain to move.
60% hasn't been moved in 3 years.
I know.
Right? So it is I don't like the term store of value because I can tell you why it is a store of value, but when people hear store of value, they say, but it's volatile. It's not a store of value for protecting against day-to-day volatility against fiat. It's a store of value against 21st century risks that are quite different to citizens of the world today than those kinds of currency volatility risks. But for peer-to-peer, it's all about stablecoins. But as I said, I just don't ever see the world using a substantial amount of payment activity taking place peer-to-peer. Now, maybe in 100 years, in a future, I can't imagine. Human beings love convenience. That is the God they pray to. Yeah. There's a reason why people will eat poisonous food like McDonald's. There's a reason why they will use websites or use very, very important electronic portals and use passwords that are 1, 2, 3, 4. Why do people do that? Because it's convenient. If you give people a choice between a great product that's highly secure, that's high quality, but's inconvenient versus a product that sucks, that's really, really cheap and doesn't work all the time, but is super easy to use, they'll always go for that. I've been in the consumer space for 40 years. Consumers will always default to what's easy. Now, you and I know one thing about crypto, it ain't easy, right?
No, exactly.
That's the reason the adoption is so slow. It's not easy.
So
Yeah.
so then why are you anti ETF?
I'm anti-ETF because while I acknowledge it allows for people to buy, by the way, no one ever thinks about the flip side of that. It also allows Wall Street to incredibly easily short, right? I don't like that at all. But the reason I'm against it is not because it doesn't allow people to buy Bitcoin. Yes, you'll get more participation among investors if you make it easier for them to acquire it. And I think that's been proven, right? What are we at? Like $60 billion or whatever of ETF. That's
Many billions.
extraordinary. Unless it came out, what was it like
10 January, something like that.
10 January?
10,
And
11,
in a few
9.
months, it's amazing, right? But it comes with risks. And the risks are Wall Street has never in its history found something popular and then didn't drive it to a point where it created massive risks that were not easily understandable by the customers they're selling to. That's the problem. I worry that the ETFs are going to pollute some other parts of the financial system. And I'll give you a very simple example. You have an ETF, it's Bitcoin, right? You have an ETF that's the S&P 500, right? And so forth. One that's gold receipts or whatever. Then you have ETFs that are hybrids, right? They're like, oh, we have 1/3 real estate and 2/3 government bonds or whatever. And then you have ETFs that actually own other ETFs. And then you have ETFs that own other ETFs that are 3x leveraged. You see how this all goes? So I guarantee you in a couple of years, if crypto collapses, and it always does, and there's some bankers before Congress saying, can you guarantee me that there is no Bitcoin leakage into things that people think are secure and safe and stable? They'll say we can't, because they've lost track of what people took that Bitcoin ETF and attached it to something else. And this is why I don't like it, because it'll give government regulators an excuse to say, aha, see, Bitcoin could potentially be backed by taxpayer guaranteed bank deposits. That's the reason I don't like it. It's if people think it's going to stay in a little box and Bitcoin ETFs are just going to sit there and they're not going to go into other things in the financial system, they're dreaming. Because I was a young man working for a public accounting firm when we started to securitize mortgage-backed securities in the 1980s. And I was auditing those mortgage-backed security sales documents. And we went from very, very well put together mortgage-backed securities with really reliable borrowers and all that. And then 30 years later, we had the financial crisis. And I learned that those things had been completely manipulated into synthetic instruments that no one understood. And Wall Street did that because there were fees. And so that's the reason I'm against ETFs, as well as what I said. You can short it.
I think what you're saying is totally true. They do present it. It presents a threat. We don't even know what the threat is, but as you're saying, it could leak into other products. And then, listen, where's the Bitcoin? I don't know. It was there, but now it's not there. It could lead to all these things. The one hope I have for it, though, is that the game theory of Bitcoin is strong. Like, in my opinion, shouldn't the game theory work on absolutely everyone? So why would they create a situation which causes panic? In fact, this was like one of my last questions. It was like, where does Bitcoin go from here? Because the game
Bitcoin?
theory is strong, no, behind everyone playing on the same side. Whilst it wasn't so much before, at least that's a hopeful thought.
Yeah, I don't think you can game theory this, or at least I can't. Maybe smarter people can. There are, with crypto, you have so many forces at work, right? Yes, it's traded globally. It's traded globally 24/7, right? And the uh, the market makers are they're not disclosing everything they're doing, right? They don't show what their book is. Uh, you have periodic uh, regulatory pronouncements that cause fear. There's no coordinated regulatory efforts among lots of different countries, right? So you have lots of uncertainty, and I think it's very hard to actually summarize all of those risks, and then try to figure out through a decision tree which way they're going to break.
Hmm.
That I think it's hard. I also think you have uh, uh, a shockingly big chasm in people who own and trade crypto between those who don't know what a blockchain is and those who design blockchains and smart contracts and are super sophisticated, not just at the technical level, but at the uh, the money movement that causes crypto to go up or down. So you have this giant chasm, and uh, when you don't know, you would think, oh, the smart people always win. Oh yeah, talk to people who were shorting GameStop, right? Like people who were totally ignorant of the way finance works, just decided to defy it, and as a result, caused a hedge fund to collapse. And so lack of education and insight and knowledge can create all kinds of unexpected results that the game theorists can account for. And you could say, but doesn't that happen in the real world? Well, we did see it with like GameStop, but in general, in order to trade stocks and have any real money, you have to be sophisticated, right? You're not moving millions of dollars a day generally in financial markets unless you're sophisticated. But you can do it in crypto because a lot of the people who own crypto were broke and just happened to be lucky. They bought Ethereum in the crowd sale for 30 cents,
Hmm.
and it went up 10,000x. And those people are doing stuff that makes no sense.
Yeah.
I see, let me tell you one example, dude. I'll leave it with that.
Yeah.
It drives me fucking nuts when I see somebody with a large position in a crypto sell all of it at a market order. I mean, I get so annoyed.
In what sense? What do you
They
mean,
literally,
market order?
I mean,
Like, if it goes up
when
to
you
X, you sell it all.
when you when you have you have Solana, right? You want to sell it. You have a choice. You can sell it uh, at at a fixed price, right? I want to sell for whatever $140. I will only sell at $140 or above, right? So that's a limit order, right? You limit the conditions upon which you're willing to sell. It has to be at a condition you accept.
Exactly.
That is the way you should sell. Or you can do market orders. A market order is you don't care about the price. But if you're going to do a market order, then what you should do is every day for 30 days, you sell a little at the market.
Mm.
Then you get lots of people who put a massive amount of what they're going to sell on the exchange. The sell wall goes way up. Everybody says, shit, this guy just moved a lot of that token to the exchange. And then you put a market order. I used to think those people were manipulators. They just did that to crash the price. Now I realize a lot of them are just dumb.
And they don't know what they're
right?
doing.
I mean, that's a huge reason why you see tokens collapse in a day. People just do a massive market order.
Yeah. William, this has been an amazing chat. I really, really enjoyed it. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Wax too, and NFTs, but my main goal was to understand Tether more. And
Okay.
I feel like I've really understood it way more than I thought I did. Let's put it that way. My
I will
last,
just say this.
yeah,
Wax was designed with a very specific idea, which was purpose-built blockchains.
So-
Blockchains built to do a certain thing. That's the way all technology works. We don't have one piece of software or one technology application to do one thing. You don't generally use email as a storage device. Some people do, but it's better to have a Mongo database or something. Wax was the first purpose-built blockchain for tokenized assets like video game virtual item skins and NFTs, what became NFTs. That's the reason we did it, and it worked incredibly well. During that NFT boom, we were doing, so Ethereum does 1 million, 1.2 million transactions a day. Bitcoin, 1 million transactions a day. For many years, Wax had more transactions than any blockchain on earth. It was 20, 25 million a day.
wow.
At virtually no cost.
Wow.
And it wasn't until Solana came around that I started hearing people say, Solana, by the way, was fortunate because when I launched Wax in 2017, no one even really understood Ethereum. And they didn't understood, I was the second largest buyer in the Ethereum crowd sale. I was involved with the predecessor to Ethereum called Mastercoin, which is what we launched Tether on. Mastercoin was the first attempt to put a smart contract on a blockchain. So I understood that Ethereum couldn't scale because of the way its queue worked to clear transactions. And when I was saying this to people in 2017 and 2018, they were like, what are you talking about? It's fine. NFTs hit, costs of gas spiked. People were like, oh my God, this doesn't work. But at that time, Wax was old news. And then Solana came out and said, we're cheaper. Well, they're cheaper and they also fucking crash every day.
Yeah.
Right. But so I'm very proud of the fact that Wax's genius, I thought, was we had a purpose-built blockchain. And then we integrated a marketplace and a wallet. We were the only blockchain builder who had a purpose in mind. Most blockchains are built as general purpose chains because the guys building them have no clue what should be done. I think purpose-built chains will be the dominant way blockchains get adopted. For the most part, blockchain technology has not been adopted. And it's because businesses don't really see the use case. They will eventually, but they will build them for the specific purpose they want. So that's what I'd say about Wax and why we did it.
It's so much. It's like this. It's a lot to understand. It's a
I
lot to
know.
understand. So that's why it takes a lot of time, I think, for this stuff
It's
to
very true.
because even I follow this space, as much as I can, and only until recently I said, okay, I think I'm starting to understand Ethereum. And then they went and they changed from proof of work to proof of stake. And I was like, okay, how can they do that? They're decentralized. No, blah, 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 blah. And it starts all these questions start coming up on me as well, you know. So it takes, I think, a lot of time to understand.
Andrew, I think what you're saying is true. And uh, I have spent, I had spent an entire career in venture capital and consumer products at Disney, and then the video gaming space for 10 years, building video game virtual item marketplaces and trading them. They're like crypto. And uh, the mountain that I've had to climb in
Yes.
terms of knowledge has been a steep, steep climb. And then when DeFi hit in 2020, that's when my health went down. My body started to crumble because I was sitting at my desk for 30 hours straight, dude. I was so excited about what was happening in 2020. I couldn't move from my desk, but eventually I sat back, and it was probably like August, and I said to my guys, I'm totally exhausted. And
Shattered, shattered.
every day I wake up, there's a new thing to learn.
I
I
know.
got to take a rest.
I know exactly. That's exactly it. And I came from an economics background,
Oh,
so
you did?
yeah, I studied economics at university. I did
Hmm.
ACCA after that, so I was an accountant for like 7, 8 years.
A
And
public accountant?
yes, I got the ACCA degree. I was working for Ernst and Young and then another
Oh,
fintech bank, but it wasn't for me because I found accounts difficult to understand. Ironically, like I just there are too many rules in accounting. But when I fell on investment and trading, I love that. Even my thesis in economics was on that. Why I liked Bitcoin so much was because I could easily understand it in the sense that I studied Keynesian economics at school, at
hmm.
university, and I knew that it never really made sense to me, all their assumptions.
Right.
Whilst Bitcoin is more of a savings Austrian school of thought. So when I just understood there were more than one way of doing economics, I was like, okay, then it makes sense. But that came off the back of a lot of economics and study and all this kind of stuff.
It's a
Many
yeah.
people don't have. So it takes time.
No,
So it
no.
takes time.
If you do not have a foundation, I think it would be extraordinarily difficult to jump in, let's say, to DeFi. And this is, by the way, this is the one
And
area
yeah,
where I have sympathy for regulators. I think a lot of regulators really just want to protect incumbent industries. But one area where I have sympathy, because I saw it, when these asshole borrowing businesses like Celsius and Genesis, when the Voyager, when those guys were taking money and putting it at risk, the people who were giving it to them, millions of people, were completely clueless
clueless.
about what was happening, right? And some of them actually thought it was the same as giving your government guaranteed bank deposit money. They thought, oh, I'm getting a 25% yield, really? But it's guaranteed. What the fuck?
Exactly.
Like, I I feel like these are the people we have to protect. Okay. There was one, I'll say this. There was a woman who called me. She was a doctor, and she was in her 40s, and she had watched some videos from Alex Mashinsky at Celsius. And he had said, take your money out of the bank. We're better. And we will always give you your money back when you ask for it. Right. And she said she thought, wow, I can earn like 20% yield. So she took her $700,000 and she gave it to Celsius. Right. And like she said to me, William, how do I get it back? And I was like, look, I have no idea. Hopefully there's something there. But, and I asked her, but didn't you realize it was at risk? No. Did you ask yourself, why is it they're offering me 20% and the bank's offering me 1%? Nope. And that's because she had never studied economics, right? So I'm like, wow, I guess this is what regulators are for, right? uh, and and crypto up until now has been, it was a small group of people, and it was like we all knew, like you said, on Poloniex, right?
Mm.
Like, dude, you might lose everything, but you're a big boy
Exactly.
and you deal with it. But Wall Street, another reason I don't like ETFs, Wall Street's very good at preying on people. Wall Street tries to convince you to give them money and they'll take care of it. And then they eat it up in fees and they put it at risk. So, yeah.
I know. Man, this is really very, very insightful. Um, it's
I
crazy
think
to
about this
speak.
a lot.
I think about this a lot too. I think about this a lot too. It's nice to actually speak to somebody and get educated on the topic properly. I'll end with this if that's okay. We're heading into a situation now where interest rates are about to fall or reduce. Um, what's the future of the next year and a half in crypto land?
I do think it'll be helpful as rates go down, even though I wish they wouldn't. But it'll be helpful because vis-a-vis crypto, the fucking Ethereum yield right now, if you liquid stake, is only about 3%, 3.2%. It's very unattractive, right? So you can make like 7% on Solana or whatever. But um, uh, so when the competing asset return drops, which will be government debt, there'll be an increased interest in crypto and yields. Okay, so that's one effect. I think also, however, that when I look at the state of the economy, and by the way, I have been very strongly a believer since all 2023 and up until now that rates were not coming down in the US. Europe, I didn't have a strong opinion. And my Wall Street friends and I talk every couple of weeks, and they were so adamant at multiple times in the last 18 months that rates have to come down. I just looked at the data and I kept saying, but the restaurants are full, the airplanes are full,
Everything's
the home prices are going up,
I know.
jobs are growing. Why are we cutting rates? So people now say, well, those things are starting to change. Yeah. So rates will likely come down. I suspect in the US, finally, there'll be a rate cut. But I don't think, if you and I talk this time next year, I don't think rates will be down more than 75 basis points in the US. EU, it might drop more. So it's not going to go back down to 1%. I suspect it'll stay at between 3 and 4% through 2030.
I hope it does as well.
Yeah.
I hope it does as well because we need a break. You should see Malta. Malta is booming. We're an island of 24 kilometers long by 12 kilometers wide. And we have about 700, 800,000 people. Of about 2 million that come through the doors in summer. And you can tell everyone is. But in the process, Malta has lost its soul, in a sense. You know what I mean? Because you go out, you don't see Maltese in the road. You don't have those Maltese
I know.
things, and all this kind of stuff. But that's
When
the world we live in.
I had companies in Malta, and yeah, it's I remember when European gambling companies started to go to Malta,
We're
right?
massive in there.
You walk out of the airport and you just see all the signage, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
massive now.
Yeah. Malta, by the way, could have been like the next Isle of Man in terms of a great place to for crypto companies. But I tried to get a bank account with the Bank of Vallarta
Uh-huh.
and
BOV, Bank of Valletta.
Valletta, and I went there. They were very nice, and they just said absolutely. And I'm like, I'm not depositing crypto. I'm a real business. I
Absolutely
just
not,
have
or
cash.
absolutely? As in absolutely not?
It was absolutely not. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely not. They they uh, they were incredibly conservative,
Very
and
conservative.
and so I wound up leaving Malta because in the end, I'm like, look, I can't be in a location and not have access to banking. So, yeah, but like you see, what I told my Wall Street friends was, guys, you look at your little screens. I go in the world and I see like money. And I'm not just in New York and Los Angeles and London and Miami. I'm all over. I'm like, guys, but I see everybody spending money. And they said, oh, well, that's credit card debt. Look, credit card debt only doubled since 2008. But if you look at the spending rate went up like 4x. I'm like, no, like it's not credit cards alone. Home equity loans, a little, but not all. People have a lot of money. And this was the great mistake President Biden made in fucking 2022 when he went and he did that, or late 2021 when he did the stimulus. It turned out Americans had tons of money and then he gave everybody $2 trillion.
Yeah.
And this is why we had runaway inflation, right? So, yeah, I think crypto, however, will not change its stripes. We are going to see a post-halving run up in Q4 of this year. It will last roughly a year. Q4 2025, it'll slow down. By 2027, Bitcoin will have collapsed, Ethereum will have collapsed, Solana will have collapsed. By the way, if it doesn't, I'm going to be very happy. But this is what has happened every single cycle.
I know.
And because crypto is the only asset I know that is solely valued on sentiment, it has no value but sentiment. And because of that, I see it following these patterns again and again. And what will be very good for you and me to follow, if we don't see a run up in Bitcoin, which then leads all the others in Q4 of this year, if December of 2024, you and I are talking and Bitcoin's at 60, 70,000,
problem.
I'm telling you, I've thought through that. I've game theoried it with all of my team, what we do, but that's a scary thing because what it means is we no longer have a roadmap.
So you're saying it is a blessing in disguise that Bitcoin has revealed its 4-year cycle, and it's in our own best interest to have this 4-year cycle play out again
100%.
top in 2025 November, October, because if we don't, and we're even at 80, 70, if we haven't hit 100K or let's say 98,
yes,
5,000, you know,
yes,
then what's that's going to signal is what's going on kind of thing, which can cause a lot of panic. And that means that a lot of people will have been wrong by then. And since we're not following the 4-year cycle, what are we on now?
What are we on? And
uncertainty.
And while it's exciting, I would say it like this. We have early mankind noticed eventually that, it gets very cold. Then the cold goes away and it gets a little warm. And then rain comes. And then there's a really nice growing season. Oh, then it gets cold again. And it repeats and repeats. And eventually man said, when it starts to thaw, I need to plant seeds. And when it's really sunny, I need to work fast because winter is coming. And so it educated us about what we need to do. Well, if 1 year winter never came and for year after year it was always sunny, people would be like, oh, okay, I guess we just continually plant. But then all of a sudden a month comes and it starts to snow and freeze, but nobody had set aside food because they thought it would always grow, they'd be fucked, right? Humans need repetition. If we do not get repetition, then what that means is we have no roadmap. Now, here's what I think you could game theory. The fact that we have a roadmap is what makes people very interested in crypto, because it's like going to a card table and knowing how the game goes. If we suddenly lose this roadmap of what is going to happen, I actually think Bitcoin's appeal will go down, crypto's appeal will drop, because then it truly is just, it's not gambling, because with gambling, you know the odds, you can look at other players, it's random. Gambling is not random. Gambling is probabilistic. We will go from that to random. Humans don't like random. And so I think it would cause crypto's appeal to drop, except for a small group of people who just are just playing the lottery in a way, you know?
I know what you mean.
So, and the great thing is, literally in the next 12 months for sure, but I would argue in the next 6 months, you and I are going to know if we're being consistent with the pattern.
Yes, no, definitely. So there's all models are broken. I've heard it all, blah blah blah. I follow everyone. However, there is this power law which just stuck with me. It feels like Bitcoin is
Yeah.
follows nature. You know what I mean? So I'm confident that
Yeah.
it will actually repeat the cycle. And if it does repeat the cycle, it basically convinces me that it is truly a savings machine. Why? Because it's predictable.
Yes.
Understand the saving machine, and in 4 to 8 to 12 years, you'll actually make money out of it. Why? Because it is a savings technology that we use, all of us at once.
Yes. And to me, it's also why you don't put 100% of your wealth into crypto, but you have some assigned to it. And I can give you, if we ever sit down, I'll tell you the reasons why I believe it is going to follow a pattern and why people are going to continue to want it. It's a very valuable thing to have access to a phenomenon like crypto. A lot of people like that exposure. They can monetize that kind of volatility with some predictability. I think that's very attractive as an asset. But it will be, on the one hand, deeply concerning, and on the one hand, much more interesting if we don't have it. The real challenge I have, and I've talked to very smart people about this, is now that everybody has seen this pattern, will everybody behave the same way because of that? Because everybody knows in Q4 2025, you need to get out. But that means you and I should get out in Q3 2025.
Yes.
And then some other people will say, I'm going to get out therefore in Q2. And so, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
no, I know exactly what you mean. Will it be sunny in April, every April? But you know what I mean? Can you swim in Malta in April? Yes. Is it going to be colder than some other days? Yes. But likely that August will always be sunny.
Yes.
Kind of
and
thing.
yet there are people who get caught without sunscreen all the time.
All the
so
time. Exactly.
This is, and when greed sets in, people just, it's like you have a hot hand at a table.
Exactly.
You have a bunch of money. You're like, I'm just going to stick in. So that might happen, but it's, we will know in the next 6 to 12 months, we will literally be able to see, this is where crypto is now. So, all righty.
Listen, thank you so much.
Good talking to you, man.
I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you, Shirley, as well, for reaching out. It was a real.
Of course. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions, but I'll follow up to share a couple of additional assets and everything.